Salam alaikum. This is Chicken Philosophy, the Meccan Revelations, part 41, in which sometimes, we read the Meccan Revelations by Ibn al-Arabi. And, that's what we're going to do today. Mostly. That's my plan. How's everybody doing? It is officially
December
30th. I think it's safe to say, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. Happy New Year. I might not see you again until 2025. So you might be seeing me in 2025. That is the nature of time travel and also recorded things. You can record it and then play it back later. Basic stuff. Pretty basic, I'd say. Are we wonky? I'd say we're a little wonky, just a little. And so today what we're going to do, I'm just going to deal with it. What we're going to do today, first, the incense. I'm going to be a little unorthodox. The thing is, I have those 7 nice Arabian incenses that unfold and show a mosque or something. And then I have that gold oud. And I've just been kind of going back and forth between those two or Nag Hammadi if I'm in a funny mood. And so today I'm going to be a little unorthodox. Today we're going to be lighting rose incense, specifically the little Japanese stick incenses that you can use for meditation, that if you go to a Japanese Buddhist temple, then you will surely find incense that looks like this, very thin, very, and it all, like, if it's frankincense or sage, it smells a little different from the rose, but it also they all have something in common. They all have that, it's a Japanese stick incense thing in common. I thought I was prepared today, but I was not quite as prepared as I thought I was. There we go. That's nice. So, if you have some Morning Star brand rose incense at home, now's the time to pause and light it. So you can be here with me in 3 of our 17 senses, 57 perceptics, if you're nasty. Janet Jackson, could you let everyone know? Because occasionally, I'm my generation, and I have a habit of I got used to talking to this people who were my age in my social demo. And so someone commented on a video recently, you said Borg, is that a Star Trek reference? I'm my immediate response, this is not a rational response, but my immediate response is, of course. But I know there's younger people and there's older people and there's people my age that never watched Star Trek The Next Generation or Voyager or anything else that they showed up on. What am I talking about? I don't know. I have no idea. I think I said something that prompted me to go down that path of thought, but I don't know what it was. So that's fun. Yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. If you're nasty. So occasionally I'll say the Our Father or the Pater Noster, if you're nasty. And that's a very specific reference that you might not be catching. So Janet Jackson, could you please just let everyone know?
No, my first name ain't baby. It's Janet. Miss Jackson if you're nasty.
Now you know. That's the reference being made when you hear me say the phrase, if you're nasty. Okay, so the incense is done. Here comes the beverage. Now this, a brief funny story. So this is like a handmade cup. It's I think it says Goa on it somewhere. Maybe not. So these are sold in little shops along the side of the road in touristy parts of the neighborhood. The touristy parts of the state. To me, this is very fancy. To me, where I come from, handmade, imported from India, is that goes on the top shelf behind the glass, and something cranked out of a factory goes on, all right, whatever. If it breaks, who cares? And so So yeah, one time I had this like these red Nescafe cups that they make you like the only coffee they had was Nescafe, and the only option for buying Nescafe was with a free cup. So I ended up with this red cup that says Nescafe along the side, and then so then one time I made coffee for Piyu and Piyu's of course from India, and so I made one coffee in here and one coffee in the red Nescafe, and I said, yours is the fancy cup. And she reached for the Nescafe. And I was like, what? And she's like, what? You call that fancy? This is like some handmade, like what? So it's just interesting how in different places people have different ideas about different things. All right. Next. We do bibliomancy. If you don't stop that, this is Hafiz, poetry by Hafiz, 14th century, 1300s, Persian Sufi poet. If you don't stop that, is the name of the poem. I used to live in a cramped house with confusion and pain. But then I met the friend, with a capital F, which probably means his Sufi teacher, and started getting drunk and singing all night. The friend is God. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to edit. I don't mean to analyze in the middle of reading. I'll start at the beginning and just read it this time. I used to live in a cramped house with confusion and pain. But then I met the friend and started getting drunk and singing all night. Confusion and pain started acting nasty, making threats. With talk like this, quote, if you don't stop that, all that fun, we're leaving, end quote. I love it. Yeah, go ahead, get the fuck out. Confusion and pain, threatening to leave if you don't stop having fun. It's a good one. I think we can take that one to heart. All right, so last time, did I say it's part 41? I hope that's right. In part 40, we did a little less reading. By we, I mean whoever that was. Edward, I think. And a lot more like talking about other stuff. So anyway, I'm going to start reading. So last time what we read was the italics editor's note for the section called Gathering and Its Mysteries. And in the previous, so episodes 1 through 40 are all these pages. Episode 40 specifically is this paragraph introducing this page. If this is your first time on Chicken Philosophy, or if this is your first time checking out Meccan Revelation on Chicken Philosophy, you may wish to navigate the playlist. If you want to start at the beginning of the book and be like, what is this? Why is he reading this? Is he a Muslim? What's happening? Then check out part 1. And if you want to hear this paragraph, check out part 40. Otherwise, you can look at the thumbnails and pick the wackiest one and start there, just to see what happens. Here's the playlist. Bye-bye. Okay, here we go. Picking up right where we left off last time. This is Ibn Arabi's voice, Ibn Arabi's pen, translated into English. If you should hear or see through God, He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing, the one, the unique. You are not in Him, while the entities subsist: soul, intellect, spirit, and body. But if you enter into gathering of gathering, you will accompany Him through Him. Here you are, the eternally subsistent Lord. If you come to know this and become qualified by it in your state, you will knit together the whole affair. Know that gathering for one of the tribe is the allusion of him who alludes to God without creation. Abu Ali Dakhak said, quote, gathering is what is negated from you, end quote. A tribe of them said, quote, gathering is the act of God through you, which he truly lets you contemplate, end quote. Some people said, quote, gathering is the contemplation of true knowledge. Its proof is, quote within quotes, from thee alone we seek help, end quote within quotes, Quran 1:5, end quote. One of them said, quote, gathering is the affirmation of creatures subsisting through God, while gathering of gathering is annihilation, and from the contemplation of anything but God, end quote. One of them said, quote, gathering is the contemplation of others through God, while gathering of gathering is total absorption and the annihilation of the sensation of everything other than God in the overpowering waves of reality with a capital R. Oh, I kind of dig that one. Okay. One of them said, quote, gathering is the contemplation of God's control over all, end quote. Among the poetry written by the people, the Sufis, on gathering and dispersion is this line: having been gathered in him, I was dispersed from myself, single in union, two in number. Sounds like non-duality to me. Not two, not one. Thus have I mentioned some of the sayings that have reached us concerning gathering and gathering of gathering. In our own view, gathering is that you gather in him his attributes and names that you have attributed to yourself, and you gather in yourself your attributes and names that God has attributed to himself, so that you are you and he is he. Gathering of gathering is that you gather in him what belongs to him and what belongs to you, and you return all of it to him. Quote, to him will be returned the whole affair, end quote. Quran 11:123. Now, it's interesting. It seems like if you're wanting to get toward gathering of gathering, a good first step, like if you're chewing your cud in a field, now I sound like Martin Luther. If you're starting from zero, if you're starting from scratch, if you're starting from cussing at the guy who just cut you off in rush hour traffic while having a cigarette out the window and burning yourself in the eye from the flying sparks of it, if that's your starting point, don't go directly to gathering of gathering. Start with gathering. That's what I'd say. That's where there's a little bit of wisdom, and there's a balance to be found. And in that balance are phrases like self-initiation, which become useful. In other words, if you join the cult, whatever cult it is, then they'll say, okay, step one, just sit here. Okay, step two, sit here and do this. And then eventually you get there. Eventually you get to the, okay, now do gathering of gathering, Am I making sense? Where sometimes people have a tendency when they're on their own to go directly from, get that shit out of my eye, gathering of gathering, which, there's nothing wrong with it per se, just that you might not have success. On your first try, you might get nothing, and then you might decide the whole thing is bullshit. Where if you start with gathering, Then move along to gathering of gathering. I'm me, you're you. Okay, all right. There is no me, only you. All right. You know, like, kind of like that, in their terms. In alchemical terms, it would be sort of like, oh, well, solve a coagula, which is exactly what he's talking about, gathering and dispersion. Oh, he's talking alchemy, isn't he? Yes, he is. We stumbled our way to it. Okay, quote, surely unto God all things come home, end quote, Quran 42:53. Yes, they do. And don't call me Shirley. If you have no idea what that was a reference to, stop watching this video right now and go watch Airplane the movie. And if you're like, that wasn't funny, it was just offensive. Oh, so cute. Your kids are going to love it. And you're going to hate them for loving it. And they're going to hate you for hating it. That is the curse I deliver. I'm not out here giving curses. I'm just pointing out the inevitable. The pendulum swings both ways. Anyway, where were we? So there is nothing in engendered existence but his names and attributes, though the creatures have claimed some of them for themselves, and God has gone along with their claim. So he addresses them according to what they claim. Some of them claim names that are specific to him in common usage. Others have claimed that, as well as attributes which have come in the law and which, according to the exoteric authorities, are only worthy of temporally originated things. I like when people use the word exoteric. Only the esoteric use the word exoteric. If you don't know the vernacular, esoteric means for the few. It's inherently an elitist term. And exoteric means for the many, as in mass. Music for the masses, anyone? That's what you're hearing. It's an album by Depeche Mode called Music for the Masses. They apparently they saw a record called Music for the Millions and they thought it was silly. And since they're so niche and nobody buys their records, they decided to name their next album Music for the Masses, and it was like a massive hit. So it was like very ironic, and it was a sound that hadn't really. They were at the time they were pioneering a lot of different styles. I mean, in a way, ideas. It's not like they were the first people to say these things, but they were the first people to say them in music that became popular on the radio. So there's a lot of qualifiers, you know what I'm saying? Plus the style, a lot of keyboard, a lot of electronic stuff. I grew up with Depeche Mode. It's one of those generational things. Oh, is that a Depeche Mode reference? Of course it's a Depeche Mode reference. Is that a Star Trek reference? Of course it's a Star Trek reference. Is that a Tron reference? Of course it's a Tron reference. If it happened in the 80s, I'm referencing it. If it happened in the 70s, I might also reference it just to let you know that I'm kind of cool, because I paid attention when my mom was telling me about the stuff that happened before I was born. A little bit. I was vaguely aware of some things in the 90s for the first half. And then after that, I'm just... I was in the cult. Sorry, I have no idea. If you tell me, oh, that fashion is very 2006, I'm like, is it? Is it 2006 or 1997 or 2024? I have no idea. I can't differentiate between them. They all look the same. But 80s, I can spot. I can tell you if it's 83 or 87 or 82 or 81 or 89 or 86 or 85. Anyway, sorry. As for our own path, we do not claim any of that whatsoever. However, we let it be known that the names are the property of the effects, of the preparedness, of the entities, of the possible things within him. Okay, I don't want to make editor Edward do work, so I'm going to make you do work. Let's see. So, known only by him who knows what did we just read? Did we just read this? What? I don't know. That's so weird. All right. Yeah. That God is identical with being and the... As for our own path, we do not claim any of that whatsoever. We let it be known that the names are the property, so the property of the effects. Okay, so you got property of the effects. What are the names, right? The names are the property. They're owned by the effects. The effects of what? The effects of the preparedness. The preparedness of what? The preparedness of the entities, which, as we all know, don't exist, right? Of the possible things within him, with a capital H. That's fun. You can draw that out if you want to, just to be silly. I don't know. Make it into art. This is a hidden mystery. That's the kind of thing esoteric folks say. So you got esoteric Buddhism in the form of Shingon. They're the only ones who call themselves that. I think because what happened was the esoteric Buddhism. I mean, what Shingon Buddhists in Japan call esoteric Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhists call Buddhism. You know, and then like people who are only really familiar with Tibetan Buddhism as Buddhism call it Buddhism, and then so if they go to Shingon, they're like, this is esoteric Buddhism, not exoteric Buddhism. And you're like, well, what's the difference? And then they start describing stuff you're familiar with from your Tibetan Buddhist friend because it's the same. And what? Yeah. So sometimes esoteric things become co-opted by the equivalent of the Roman Empire and become exoteric things. For the few, for the many. So like with music, sometimes a new band comes out and 30 people are like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And then they go, platinum, triple, whatever, and they're on the radio and everybody's like, oh my God. And they're like selling out concerts and stuff. And so the esoteric has become exoteric. All right. Anyway, exoteric New Age. Where were we? What are we reading here? I don't know. Yeah. Changes in them, knows that God, nothing and then changes. Right. The possible things. For the person of sound intelligence, I have no idea what we just read. Oh, this is a hidden mystery. Known only by him who knows that God is identical with being, with a capital B. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Check out Transformations by my dad. And before I point to it, I need to let you know that I'm not just pointing to it because my dad wrote it. I am pointing to it because it is the best book I've ever read. And after my dad died, when I was 15 years old, I after like another year, I received the 3 copies that were existent that he hadn't given away in the 70s. Of his book that he wrote. And I read it, and I was like, holy shit, I had no idea that was what my dad was like. Because, he was in the middle of like a happy marriage, kind of exploring all kinds of different schools of thought at the time in 1976. And then he wrote this brilliant book. And then he was like, all right, I'm going to have a son. And then, oh shit, I'm going to get divorced. And then I'm going to be a miserable asshole and raise my son yelling at him and stuff like that. And so... I'm oversimplifying, but by the time he died, I was like, yeah, he was a grouchy, overweight man. I didn't realize that there was a relatively thin, within the grouchy, overweight man in his 50s was a thin 36-year-old man who was like writing Transformations. It's a really good book. I didn't sell it very well. I'm giving insight about it to people who've already heard me talk about it ad nauseum. Here's Transformations. He talks a lot about being with a capital B. He doesn't talk so much about God though. But yeah. Anyway, God is identical to being. This is where the Vedanta and the Sufi are on the same page. Some of the practices are different in the terms. Okay. And that the entities of the possible things remain in their state. Nothing of them changes in their entities. Did you change in your entity? Continuing. For the person of sound intelligence, the expression, quote, gathering, end quote, is sufficient, since it is a word that announces manyness and distinction among many entities. Hence, in respect of distinction, gathering is the same as dispersion, though dispersion is not the same as gathering. Okay, please explain this. I'm a little lost. Except in the case of the dispersion of similar individuals, which is both gathering and dispersion together, and the definition and reality of which is the gathering of similar things. Maybe I'll understand that after I've heard it 20 times. Maybe not. Take, for example, quote, humanity, end quote. I always love putting that in quotes. The individuals of this kind are qualified by dispersion, since Zaid is not Amr, even though both are human beings, right? It is the same with all similar things and individuals of a single kind, right? Okay, I think I get that. Part of what he said, I get. Boxes, perhaps we call it. People always want to put you in a box. I made chicken philosophy partly so that I wouldn't fit in anybody's box unless it's a box. The algorithm tries to put me in a box. I can tell by what videos it recommends to the person known as chicken philosophy. And I'm like, really? Really? That's your best shot? That's it? Because I talk about Martin Luther and God and Jesus, you think, oh, he must be one of these. No, not so much. And then I talk about New Age stuff. And you must be one of these. Oh, no, not so much. Oh, you must be one of these. Oh, no. All right. Gen X. There's a box. Gen X can be, accurately categorized as people who hate categorization and being put in boxes. So I admit that's a box I do fit in. God says, quote, there is nothing like him, end quote, Quran 42:11, in many senses. He already knows how every exegete will interpret this verse. The highest of these senses is, there is nothing in existence that resembles God or is a likeness of God, since being/existence, being, that which is, existence itself is God. The entities called Edward, Jolab, whatever your name is, are temporal illusions. They are born and they die. But existence, the only thing that exists, which is everywhere and all things, carries on. So if you have some idiot asshole standing in a robe behind a pulpit, and he's got an image that's supposed to represent God behind him, and he stands between you and it and tells you, you will not get to it unless you do this, and is everybody gone? Also suck my... Then that's what they call exoteric. Esoteric is just recognizing, meditating, closing your eyes, becoming one with the great being, the only being there is. If you want. I know Gordon hated all that oneness shit. Right. Okay, where were we? The highest of these senses is... Yeah, we just read that. Oh, I didn't finish the sentence. That happens. There is nothing in existence that resembles God or is a likeness of God, since being/existence is nothing but God himself. Yeah, that's what I just said. Ibn Arabi, same page. So there is nothing in existence other than he that might be his likeness, or opposite, This is inconceivable. Again, if you don't know that reference, that's something from the 80s called The Princess Bride. I know it sounds lame. It's one of those things that sound lame and aren't, isn't? Things, yes. One of the things isn't. It's good. You should watch it. So watch Tron, watch The Princess Bride, listen to Depeche Mode music for the masses, and become one with the great being. That's your homework. And if you want more about becoming one with the great being, check out the Vedanta series called Ashtavakra Gita here on Chicken Philosophy. And Happy New Year, happy 2024. We did it. I hope that you had a good one. I hope that you can look back with some sense of accomplishment, pride. If not, then it's fine too. It's fine too. I hope it's good. I hope it's good for you. I hope the New Year's is good for you. I hope 2025 is good for you. And you hear that awful sound out there? That's fun. We'll talk more about that another time. For now, I will go ahead and bid you a sincere and heartfelt